Okay, morning everyone. So we're just gonna wait a bit for people to kind of stream into the chat, because it's always fashionable to be slightly late. How's everyone today? Oh, good, I hope. So like this is kind of informal. If you need to leave at any time, please feel free to leave. It's fine. As always, we will be recording this, and we will be putting up the video for you to rewatch it if you like after the session. It takes us normally a couple of days, so expect the video up by maybe Wednesday.
What?
I think that's it, right? Anyone else waiting?
It's okay lah. We can.
Okay lah. Yeah lah. Let's start. Let's just start. Let's not wait for the people who are late. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another session of Mushin Mobility Chat. So this session is a little special. But for the first time, we are finally addressing a skill, one which most of us have spent considerable amount of time on and have been frustrated on, at least for myself. Maybe some of you geniuses here don't feel it, but I have been so frustrated with this. So today, welcome to our handstand edition of mobility. So we have a few questions. We'll start off today's session addressing and just discussing those questions. After which we will get some of the coaches to share their experiences with mobility and handstands. And if we have time after, we will have like another Q&A where you can ask anything that pops up during this duration of the chat. So without further ado, we're gonna have our first question. So first question we have from Sam. So hi Sam, welcome to our chat. I think I see Sam in the chat. Well, I think I saw Sam in the chat. Sam? Okay, anyway, hope you're here, Sam. So Sam's question is, for everyone listening in, broke his wrist 15 years ago, now has limited mobility. Wrist extension is limited to about 40%. How could he approach learning handstands? So actually, Sam, if you are here and if you don't mind, just to help us understand the question a bit better, do you mind sharing what you mean by 40%?
Yeah, so my right wrist is my good wrist, so that one goes back normally.
Yeah.
The left is the one that I broke, and it doesn't extend past that.
Okay, so like that's...
Yeah, so normal handstand, normal push-up is something that I can't really do without putting my elbow and shoulder in very weird angles.
Okay, so just to be clear, when you say 40%, it's more like 40% of what it was previously?
Yep, correct.
Okay, cool. All right, so Ziqian, you want to take this one? No, I'll take this one? Okay, sure. Let me just talk a bit about it slightly. Yeah. So like you described yourself, right? This wrist extension, this position, this is basically like what your wrist has to do for a handstand. So in terms of, if let's say handstand is a goal, the first thing I would do is to try to find a way to get this angle back. So the first thing that I always tell people to do is you will have to just test it out. And like you mentioned, push-up places your wrist in a very similar position. So if by doing push-ups, it doesn't feel great, spend some time working the wrist, getting it stronger, getting it better. And then from there, the handstand stuff will make a lot more sense. Because right now, if, at least from my opinion, if your wrist doesn't have that range, or it's difficult to, or it causes you discomfort in a handstand, in a push-up, which has limited, it just isn't like full body weight. When you go in a handstand upside down, you do your chest to wall, or anything like that, it's just going to make that whatever issues you have here worse. It's like training handstands isn't going to give you stronger wrists. You need stronger wrists to practice handstands.
Well, the thing is that there is no problem with the strength of my wrist. They are pretty strong, but there are still 2 screws inserted, and some of the bones are fused, apparently.
Yep.
So probably I can increase my range of motion a little by doing exercises, but regaining the full range of motion that was made clear by the surgeon from the start, it would never happen.
Yeah, so like, do you practice handstands now? Like, have you tried, or something you want to do?
No, I haven't done them in probably 15 years.
Okay, but how about push-ups? How do push-ups feel for you?
For push-ups, I use small parallettes. That way, I can just have a full straight wrist by holding onto them. So I was wondering whether something similar can be done for handstands, for example.
Yeah, so that was actually what I was going to. It's like just the same way that you play around with the wrist position for your push-ups, you can do the same for your handstands. So of course, it's going to feel a bit different. The nuances of the wrist requirements will change, but it doesn't mean that you can't handstand. It just means that you got to at least start in a different position. But yeah, I would definitely play around the parallels. If like getting to there is not possible, you have screws on, it's just not going to happen. Yeah, that's one way that definitely you could try.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Does you have anything to add on?
Okay, I finally woken up. I can answer now. But just some thoughts on this, because you did pointed out that the last time you did handstands was like 15 years ago. So that's a pretty long time of like not putting load, the intensity in that position. So I guess my point is that whatever you are planning to do, number one, load it up progressively. It doesn't make sense for your wrist to, on a daily basis, you don't put it in the plank even because you are a little concerned about like how you influence your elbow positioning, for example. So your go-to is always a parallel. So effectively, the amount of like time spent in that wrist position is limited. So you do want to progressively load it up. That's one. Then number two is that, let me think, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, your training ratio might also need to differ a little bit, because right now maybe like 80% of your training is done on parallels and you can afford to do more stuff on the parallels, and 20% is spent on mobility. So you do have to consider that if you decide to spend time on the wrist, that it might be greatly limited. Your ratio might need to be adjusted to like 20% with work done on your hands in this position, and 80% of it will be like range expansion, developing flexibility, developing strength over your flexibility kind of thing. So the second thing to consider, to just sum it up, is like your training ratio. Because to simply put it, right now, your wrist's ability to like manage load, the working capacity of it has been greatly limited. So if you ever decide to want to work with this position again, you do have to progressively work your way up and manage your expectations over it. Otherwise, it can get quite frustrating if you want to have like a direct change, like, oh, I'm just going to shift all my sessions from parallels to no parallels today. then suddenly after that session, you feel like, ah, shit, my wrist is very sore or painful kind of thing. So yeah, consider that as well. Training ratio, progressively load it up. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Can I add a question? I think I know Tsen's answer to this. I'm curious to hear from Alvin. I have a friend who has a similar situation. He trains in Bali. He has a plate in his wrist. Dom Origins Nutrition. I don't know if you know. He apparently, according to him, he's spoken to a few hand balance teachers who told him that he should just not do it on his hands. So he right now is only doing handstands on parallels. And then when I last spoke to him, he said that it's just impossible to get that ROM back for him because he broke it quite badly a couple of years ago. What do you think about that?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so for me, the important thing is always the why. So I don't know who he is. I don't know who he is. I don't know like what his job is, but I'm assuming nutrition. So let's say if handstands or hand balancing is a recreational pursuit. And when I say recreational, I mean if you're not doing it as a job,
Yeah.
you're not performing, then yeah, I would say there may be no need to even do it on your hands. It's just like something that you want to do. Of course, just like Zitian has mentioned, he could try by progressively overloading the joint, by putting in dedicated work at getting the range back. But it could be a case where it might be impossible because if you've broken stuff and your bones have fused a certain way, sometimes it's just not possible. Or like the damage is done. This is your current state. So like without really knowing the details, and I'm sure that he has gotten many opinions, he's gotten like x-rays done, and it could be the case where it's impossible or the effort needed to reach that stage is just not worth it. And if it's so it comes back again to the why.
I mean, I guess my question is generally where is the line, right? Between oh yes, you've broken something, but you could progressively load it, and someone who said like I had a student who came to me to my yoga class once. He said, "Oh, I broke my elbow," and then my doctor said I can never ever do a push-up. I mean, obviously there is an extent to some things like that, but also how do you know? Like if somebody comes to class and be like, "Hey, I broke my elbow. I can't lock my elbows." Should I say you should progressively load it, or should I say I think you better go and check what is the extent of your injury?
Yeah, so I think there are two ways I'm going to answer that question because I know in this chat there are quite a couple of coaches as well. So from a coaching perspective, I would just leave it because the person that has the most experience with that issue is the person themselves, right? They've lived with it for X number of years. They've gone through operation. They've gone through all that kind of stuff. So from a coaching perspective, if it's someone I'm meeting for the first time or someone that comes into my class occasionally, I would just respect that and allow that person to do whatever regressions or variations that make sense for them. From a mobility perspective, I think what you mentioned about progressive overload and like trying around with movements is exactly what I would do. And it once again it comes back to, I know I repeat this myself a lot, but it comes back to the why. If it's something like, okay, I can't do a push-up again or I can't bend my arm at an angle, does it now make sense to put in some time and effort to try to do it? I would say definitely yes. And where does that line come in, or how much is enough? It's a hard question to give a general answer to because everybody's body is different. Your tolerance to pain is different. Your coordination, your awareness of the joint is different. So that line could vary from person to person. And it's really, really hard to determine or to give meaningful advice in a short duration away from a one-from-one setting. So this also goes back to the point of why I always encourage people to go seek like one-on-one help, to go get your stuff access, because it's not that we don't want to give general advice. It's really difficult to give meaningful advice. So the best advice I can say is, strengthen the joint, and eventually, and take it from there. Okay, that was a pretty long-winded answer, but does that sort of answer your question, Kelly?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so we're going to just jump into one more question, which I'm going to throw to Ziqian to answer. So Ziqian, you get prepared, yeah? Okay, so the next question is from Rachel. Are there any exercises to treat or prevent wrist injuries from handstands, such as stiff wrist problems causing inflammation? Yeah, maybe to give a bit more context question, Rachel, if you're here, are you here, Rachel? If you're here and you just like to clarify or expand that question, just kind of unmute yourself. If not, yes.
Hi, sorry, I'm here. I didn't hear that.
Hey, Rachel.
I just joined recently, so I didn't hear the beginning.
No problem. I don't usually do this, but I thought I saw your name in the chat, and then it'd be nice to just kind of expand on the question, because the question you're asking is pretty broad. And I'm quite we could talk about your question for an hour. So I want to know a bit, do you have any more specifics to the question? Like when you say stiff wrist problems causing inflammation, do you have like an example, or is it something you experienced personally, or in a friend that
like practice of more handstands, that the wrist starts hurting, but it's like an injury pain. It's not aching pain. It's a sharp pain that will radiate through the hand and mainly through the hand.
Okay, so normally when I would hear a question like that, like a few questions come back to mind. When you say it hurts or that pain comes, what did you do leading to that pain? How frequent is that pain? Is the pain getting better? Is it getting worse? So these are, for me, these are the questions that I would like to always address first, because what you do to help the situation really depends on the answers to this question. So try to speak very briefly on this. So in terms of events leading to this pain, for example, if you suddenly ramped up your training, when you've gone from say 1 to 2 sessions a week to maybe 5, 6 sessions a week because you have a event, or maybe because now you're very motivated to try handstands, and I'll say that probably a good guess would be just the volume of training. From this level, you now increase to this level, your joint is now subjected to this much more. So the first thing I'll do is, instead of looking towards exercises, I will just reduce the volume and see how the joint feels. It gets better, yeah, maybe it's just a joint, maybe it's just a volume issue. The second thing, if you're already doing that, how is it responding? If it's getting better, great. Maybe you found something that works. It doesn't get better, maybe volume is not the issue, maybe it's something else, right? And now it could be your wrist, it could be your elbow, it could be your shoulder. These are the questions that we need to know to lead up towards this, towards getting a meaningful answer. Of course, the short answer is, if you're only looking for a list of exercises, sounds really simple. You just Google wrist strengthening exercises, or make it more specific, wrist strengthening exercises for handstands, and Google will give you an amazing list of wrist exercises for you to try.
Got it, thanks.
Yeah. So Ziqian, I'm so sorry. Ziqian, I hijacked your spotlight. You want to add on to this?
I think Alvin has pretty much covered most of the points. I would probably just add in a little bit and point out the fact that when most people are facing pain and stuff, it's like they are finding remedy to the symptoms. It's like, oh, I'm getting a headache, I'm just gonna pop a Panadol kind of thing. And it feels like that kind of analogy with most people when they encounter pain during training and stuff. And so just to draw links to what Alvin was saying, definitely consider adjusting your training volume. And in relation to that, sometimes doing more mobility exercises might not be the best solution, because whatever you are doing is like additive loads and stress placed on the joints. So sometimes it could be a matter of like lack of wrist strength. So when you're attempting something that's more intense and difficult than usual, that it triggers some sort of pain, then, you know, back off, reassess like how you have been approaching your training, maybe address that joint individually first, build strength up to a reasonable level before you attempt that difficult stuff. But if it's like as a result of volume, like, oh, it hurts a little bit, but I'm just going to push through it, or it starts to hurt a little bit more, I'm just going to push through it a little more, then, you know, that's not the most sensible thing to do. So I'm just giving more, expanding more on the perspective of including mobility as a solution to wrist pain. Don't treat it like oh, I need a Panadol for that pain kind of thing, mentality. See it more like, you know, you need to manage your overall training volume. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Oh. Okay. So I think anyone has more questions? I think you liked. Okay, we have one question from Christina. So apart from the pain in wrists, I often feel soreness, stiffness in the fingers and the base of knuckles so much that sometimes I don't have strength to cut my nails with a nail clipper. Any particular favorite exercise focus more on finger, hands than on the wrist? Okay, so I guess this question is more again looking, you know your body, you've asked yourself those questions, and now you're at a stage where you're looking for exercises to work, exercises / stretches to help with your current situation. So I'm not going to delve too deep in that. Like mentioned, Google is a great resource. The internet is an awesome resource, guys and ladies. Google will tell you a lot of stuff that you know. The hard part, of course, is filtering out the things that are useful and the things that are not. So very quickly, if you want to go into like finger stuff, instead of stopping the stretcher, just stretch the fingers this way. And everything they can apply to get your fingers feeling, your fingers feeling better can be done from positions like this, or positions like this. Okay, so like same thing, Google it, like finger stretches, finger exercises. You're gonna get a lot of stuff. If you're not sure, drop us a message after this. You need more, and we will get you some resources. Okay. Okay, no response, but us. Okay, thank you. So now we're gonna move on. We're gonna like stop the questions. We're gonna move on to what we want. Like talking about tips for handstands. So yeah, as promised, today we're gonna have 5 tips from 5 different coaches. Yeah. Okay. First time, not just the Chen and Alvin talking. We're gonna have our other handstand coaches chime in as well. So everyone's gonna share like one tip that they have learned from their experience regarding mobility, regarding handstands. Listen to it, and you have questions on those, write it in the chat. We'll try to have a quick Q&A after that where you can address your questions to the different coaches. Cool? So Tian, can you just kick us off and lead us off with the first point, because I kind of forgot who was supposed to go first.
Kaylin is supposed to go first.
Kaylin, take it away, Kaylin.
Hi. I think most of you know who I am. I hope. So he made us write down a list of our tips. Who's that? Is it Michelle? No, I'm not going to introduce myself. So my tip for training is be consistent, which everybody knows but don't want to do. But also more importantly that I realize as I train more and more is to not be anxious. Do I really have to introduce myself? No, right? I am Kaylin. This is a bit of it. So I was saying, be consistent with your training. It's not something that comes in months. Everybody who comes to my class for the first time asks me, how long do I have to train to get a handstand? My answer is I've been doing this for at least 3 years. And then they gave me the look like, oh my God, you mean I have to do this for 3 years? Yes. It depends on also what Elvin said, right? Why you want to do it. If you just want to pop up in a vinyasa, in a yoga class, feel free to do 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever gets you there. But if you really want to appreciate the technique and the art of this skill, I would say years is probably where you want to go. That's one, be consistent. And then the second part, which I felt was quite important to bring it on, knowing how this group in particular, like the Mushin group, is very, very dedicated, right? Like people come for class, 2 classes, 3 classes, like Christina, like, you know, Ryan. You do a training program and then you go for a class, you do a training program and then you go straight to a class. One thing I'll also add is progressively loading it. Yes, I gotta call you out. She once did 7 classes in one public holiday, by the way. My class was a 7th class, hand balancing class, so that was crazy. So I think one thing also is you really have to progressively load. So if you're going for 0 into today, your skills per se is 0, don't go to 100 tomorrow. It's going to hurt you. If your holds, let's say, is 10 seconds today, don't aim to scramble for like 50, 60 seconds because you're going to hurt yourself. And I've been through this many, many times. Had to get a steroid injection on my wrists for that. So be careful. It takes you out quite a long time. So that's what I would say. I know it's very easy to, once you get into this drive to go every day, go and go and go and go. I just want to jump on my hands every wall I see. I've been through that. Every wall I've seen, I just jump up to a point where my family got so used to me jumping around the kitchen. Now I learned to structure my training a little better. And if you have any questions on how to scale yourself and how to structure your training coming from where you are right now, from the level you are and where you want to get to, get a coach, which is Elvin's tip later on, so you can wait for his turn. That's all I have to say before I keep going on. Let me know if you have any questions.
Okay,
no? Good.
I'm next. Yes, what I have to say is basically that standards and guidelines, standards and numbers are just guidelines. So to give some bit of context before I dive deep into this. Of course, this is from the context of me having the opportunity and bits of experience dabbling with different disciplines that require you to have to go into handstand as well, that requires handstands in that disciplines. So with that different exposures, that gave me different perspectives on how each of disciplines are using handstands accordingly. All right. And those different disciplines have different standards required just so that it suits their discipline. Yeah. I'm saying that because right now within the industry, there are like 1 or 2 ways that's being popularized in terms of teaching handstands. You either go at it from like a gymnastics way, you know, that emphasizes a lot on like body tension and stuff, just to briefly mention this, or like your circus hand balancing way, which also have a lot of emphasis for techniques, executions and stuff. Like both have some degrees of similarities. And the way I see it is not that it's a bad thing, but sometimes I see rather unhealthy obsessions over certain aspects of things that can potentially hinder your progress, you know, like either from like, mobility aspects of things, you know, or from like aesthetic aspects of things. And I just want to point out that those are not like the absolute that you need to fulfill. Otherwise, it's going to hinder you kind of thing. So just give very different, like 2 main examples. Let's say you would have certain practices telling you that, you need to have perfect 90-degree wrist extension before it's a sound idea to go and practice handstands. Otherwise, you're just going to put your wrists at risk of injury. Like I've met and seen people that have like perfect 90-degree wrist extension or more, but they still run into wrist issues. And I've met high-level hand balancers with like shitty wrist extension like this, but they can just make fun of you and like, oh shit, one-arm handstand. I'm just gonna like kick up into one-arm handstand now and like, screw your wrist extension kind of thing. Like, of course, it's just giving perspectives for you to consider. And on the other hand, like, based on like aesthetics and stuff, you have a lot of like circus artists being very picky and particular about like, oh, I need your execution to be as such. I need the shape of the handstand to be as such. But like, just recently, there's this mini internet competition going on with like world's longest handstands, and the guy that clocked in the longest handstands was holding in a severe arch position, changing his legs position from time to time just so that he can last for like 17 minutes on his hands kind of thing. Like, of course, this is just giving context so that I am trying to, plant some seeds for you to consider that it is not an absolute. All these popularized ways have their own things that they emphasize on because that's the demands of their disciplines. And other disciplines require different things to be emphasized on. Let's say capoeira, which is an example that I personally would pick on also. They don't teach you handstands with you looking at the floor. They require for you to tilt your head in because you have to be constantly facing your opponent when you're interacting with them, like throughout your game basically. And they normally do handstands with some degree of bent arm as well because they need to transit in and out of handstands, but that's specific to their disciplines as well. And to tell them that, oh, you shouldn't be looking in or you shouldn't be bending your arms based on your perspective as like a professional performer, like I think that's just putting up different context against different contexts. So yeah, I'm just gonna like end it here and say like, consider different contexts. It is not going to hinder you from progressing. Just know how each emphasis on each detail will bring about different results in your handstands, and you then consider it based on your goals that you want to achieve. Yeah. So yeah, that's that. Raphael, you want to talk about yours? You can unmute
good morning,
yourself.
all.
No, good night.
Good.
Kidding. Sorry.
Okay, next. Okay, no, anyway, I'm Raphael. My focus or what I'm going to be sharing with is about control and coordination. So I think it ties in very nicely with what Zhixian just mentioned, that don't get too hung up on the numbers. And there are people who might espouse that you have to hit certain prerequisites to be able to do a certain movement, like especially like since Sam also brought up wrist extension is an issue. My wrist extension is here, almost as good as I broke my wrist before. So I still do handstands as much as I possibly can, but there is a certain understanding that you do need that mobility, but it comes with a lot more than mobility. That's why I didn't call it mobility, I call it control. So you do have to understand what is the level of your intended objective, which is, yes, handstand is handstand, but everyone's handstand is going to look different. The same way that you don't criticize someone for standing on their feet, like unless it's like a severe slouch or it's very dangerous for themselves. We all have our certain ways of expressing this position, which is a handstand for you. Yeah. So if you do have to make certain adjustments, like what Alvin mentioned, please do so. Okay. So I'm going to go a bit more in depth into what I say. Control and coordination. Coordination is probably going to address more of your entries, so your kick-ups, jump-ups, presses, everything. And coordination, without going too in depth, essentially it's a skill in itself. Yeah. And with every skill, I'm going to touch on the topic of greasing the groove. So greasing the groove typically refers to addressing strength as a skill, but so is coordination. So the more time you spend on any particular neurological pathway, which is maybe a movement pattern, just to simplify for a bit, the more time you spend firing this pattern, this pathway, the better you become at it. That is the essentially reason why you need to spend repetition over repetition. days, over weeks, over months to get better at this. Yeah. So that coordination is going to be very important for addressing any skill. Okay. And then addressing back towards control. So coordination was kind of a subset of control. You do need the mobility, not the mobility that everyone is telling you that you need to. Just the mobility that your body requires to have that level of awareness, mastery over the position. So adding that coordination into certain ranges of motion that you can express strength in. So pushing that end range, getting that control will help you to better master this skill, which we are addressing, hand balancing. Yeah, hope that's useful. Thank you.
Is it my turn?
Yes,
your
it is
turn.
your turn.
Okay, cool. Okay, so for me, my tip for everyone is that sometimes you also have to analyze for yourself what it is that works for you. In other words, the teacher can tell you everything that you need to know and everything that you need to do to get into a handstand and how to hold a handstand. The teacher can give you everything, but then it's also, thank you, but then it's also up to you to go take that away, go back to your house, go and analyze, go and kick up your handstand and say like, what did the teacher say again? He said you shrug my shoulders into my ears. What does that mean? What do you mean you shrug my shoulders into my ears? This way? Is it this way? Then you go to the mirror. Sometimes I will go to the mirror and I'll just like, look at it and think I'm doing it wrongly. And then I kick into a handstand and then I try and figure out what did they mean? What did they mean? This. And I keep asking myself again and again. I guess the word is I calculate in a sense, and I see every time the teacher has given me this tip, I'll bring it home and I keep trying to figure out what they mean by like take your shoulders over your knuckles a bit more. Why does that help? How does that change my handstand? And sometimes it's not something that you get straight away. When I first started doing handstands, I taught myself how to do a handstand. I started as a dancer, so I would kick up to my handstand. My shoulders would be out here. And then when I first was guided by a hand balancer, his name is Peter. I'm not sure if any of you know Peter. Peter cannot handstand. His handstands are amazing. He's this big, strong guy who was telling me I need to shrug my shoulders into my ears and I need to lock all the rest of my body, and then I'll be able to hold my handstand. And then my response, how I thought about it was, oh, this is a big, strong guy. I am a small girl, so I don't think I have the muscles to do it that way. So I didn't want to listen to him in that sense, and I made very little progress with it. And so I was a bit close-minded with how I approached his tips. But later on, when I came across another female coach who had a more similar body type to me, she gave me the exact same tips, and then I became a bit more open to it, and I realized that most coaches will tell you sort of the same thing. Handstands, if like we're coming in from this line of coaching, hand balancing, circus artists, we sort of tell you the same things and you receive it differently from different coaches. In that sense, it's like how open you are to taking tips from this person. Where am I going with this one? Okay. So where I'm going with this is that all your bodies are different, but also very similar. So tips will work for you if you look at it in a different way. Like, let's say I tell you this, I tell you to do something this way. It can be the exact same tip, but I think about it in a different way. And then your job is to go home, take it, analyze it, keep going into it, keep trying to think about it and see, maybe she didn't mean, maybe thinking of leaning the shoulders forward doesn't work for me. Maybe looking slightly further behind is what works for me, which does the same effect, but how you approach it changes. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. Yeah, that's all.
All right,
Okay,
thanks,
so
Beverly.
Alvin.
Yeah, so because I'm a little bit extra, I just want to add on one more point to Beverly's tip. Something to think about. Everybody is different, but the rules are the same. So even though yes, all boys are all different, different hand, different arm length, different leg length, different hip structure, different shoulder structure, but the rules to a handstand are still the same. You are basically stacking your entire body weight over your palms. That doesn't change. So it's a lot about listening to what your teachers say and then getting that information and applying to yourself to ask yourself, how do you fit within those rules? Okay, a little bit of add on to that. Okay, so I'm gonna last tip from me. Yeah. So the last tip I have, which definitely be applicable to everybody who has pursued any sort of skill or anything physical, is to get a coach. So why is this really helpful? Is because there's only so much you can do on your own. Like the reason why the value a coach gives you is in terms of his or her experience. When we learn something, most of the time our learning is a accumulation of our experiences from many different people. And when you hire a coach, you're not just getting experiences of one person, you're getting access to experiences of many, many people, right? Of whichever path, lineage, right, teachers they chose to learn from. So if your goal, like if you are, in this case of handstand, which is really a technical skill, if you want to get it better, it's not to say that you can't get it on your own, but getting guidance will definitely make it a lot easier. I like to use the analogy of building IKEA furniture. Like just imagine your worst IKEA experience, your worst IKEA furniture building experience. And now imagine doing it without the guide. Like if I took the guide away and I say, okay, build that furniture. Yeah, that's more or less how it's going to feel like if you try to train your own. And some people get it. For some people, it is okay. It's easy. But once again, we are all different, and not everybody works best this way. So like this is my personal experience. I struggled with this shit for a long time, and I'm not at a level where I'm very happy with. Like it's like peers that I started with are now way beyond me. And a lot part of it just comes from the fact that I'm a slow learner. I have crap coordination, and it just takes time to practice. So how it's helped me is that by finding not just a coach, by finding multiple coaches, this goes back again to Beverly's point. By finding multiple coaches, by hearing their perspectives on the same thing, which is handstands, you start to understand things a bit better. And it's not to say that one coach can solve all your problems. Sometimes it just takes a different person saying the same thing for you to accept it and to understand. And that's okay because we are human and that's the way we are made. So I'm going to just end off my point with saying that, yeah, find a coach. It will help, promise you. And of course, ideally, the coach comes from Mushin movement, ideally. But of course, you find the coach that you resonate the best with, that you have the best relationship with. Yep. Promise you, anyone who has spent time working on this, who is trying the best to care and teach for their clients, for their students, will be able to provide you some value. Okay. So yes, that ends off my tip. I will type my tip.
And add a point to your point.
Of course you can. We love that here.
I think this is it's related to Beth's point. I also wanted to say that everyone's mobility is different, right? And sometimes you just don't recognize that unless you see a coach who can see that and point it out to you. It will make your life 2 years easier. That's one. And also, I think there also is a point in coaching that you need to know that not every coach's style would suit you. So sometimes it's not that this coach is bad. Maybe their style just doesn't suit you. Everybody, like Alvin said, there is a rule to handstand, but the approach is different. The methodology is different. The way I teach and the way Zhiqian teach is drastically different. Right? That's one example. The way Miguel Santana teaches, the way Andre Bondarenko teaches, world of difference. Everybody approach it a little bit different. So sometimes people go to one coach and they're kind of like, shit, I'm not improving. Either the coach is shit or I just am not fated to do handstands ever again. So people give up. So I just want to let you know that you can just try to find more coaches until you find one that resonates with you. And hopefully you will find. Yeah, everybody has a different style. It's not that the person is shit, right? It's just that the way that the person teaches just doesn't vibe with you. You don't understand what he's talking about. He's not looking at some stuff. That being said, there are rules. So make sure you find someone who adhere to the rules. And that's the most important part. That's all. End of my rant. Welcome to my TED Talk.
All right. Okay, so there's our 5 tips from 5 different coaches whom I'm sure by now you have some experience with, because we've been running virtual classes for the past 2 months. And here's the outright advertisement. We have virtual classes for the month of June. We're still sticking to a schedule of 25 classes a week. And there's handstands, I think, almost every day. So if you haven't tried, please up and try our classes, okay? I'm not shy about this. I'm advertising for Mushin movement right now. Okay, so now we have some questions popping out, which is great. We love questions. So first question we have, can I ask, are there aspects of handstands that you don't like? And how do you overcome it? Example, tuck handstands. Coaches, the floor is yours.
Well, handstand fucking sucks. But I just to be a little more honest and sharing my experiences into this as well. Like, if you really want to progress, expect this to be a dull process. All right. Like, I'm of course chiming in with my experiences of having gone through 5 months of formal online coaching with a coach, and like getting asked to do each training session lasts for at least a good 2 over 3 hours kind of things, and to do it for like 5 days a week. And it honestly got to a point midway through that I'm asking like, why the fuck am I doing handstands, and it just fucking sucks kind of thing. Like, but to be fair, like I do see progress. Like, it definitely has progress with it, and that just comes with the nature of any skill practice. You need repetitions to practice, to get better. Of course, meaningful repetitions, but yes, you need repetitions to get better. That is a fact. So how you choose to approach it, depending on how that generates repetition, that will determine your progress. But that process of me going through formal programmed practice is just a little mind-numbing. So to now answer your question specifically, it is a grind. It is necessary. I don't like that. So at this point in time, I don't train as much as I used to within that 5 months of time. I definitely see some bit of improvement to some degree with my handstand progress, but I'm enjoying it a bit more, like I can get to practice more stuff versus having a very zoomed in scope of, because my coach tells me to practice mainly on this few components, that I'm spamming that and I can see progress. But right now that I am spreading my practice out more, progress is a little more like evenly spread out, although a little bit more slow, but it's more enjoyable. So it's the time you're willing to put in and the amount of work you're willing to put in, and how these 2 factors in turn affect your motivation over practice. Because I think motivation over practice is a realistic thing to consider. You are not training at a competitive level. You are not trying to train to perform or to win medals. So as general population, considering that will be helpful in terms of like helping you to decide how you want to approach things. training 3 hours a day is definitely not for everyone. And in turn, that will lead to your speed of progress. So being realistic about how you expect your progress to be too. So yeah. Anyone else wants to talk about this?
Can I jump in here?
No,
Cannot.
kidding.
So I'm going to touch on a different point from what Jason just mentioned. So going back to mobility, I would say like there's a certain aspect that you've brought up, you identified, let's say tuck handstand drills, like you do not like this. So maybe you want to go one level deeper, like ask yourself like, why do you not like this? Like what aspect of this is giving you this certain issue that you are having a dislike towards your training? So if it's like, maybe each time you come up to do a tuck handstand drill, it's very painful. It requires a lot of strength, maybe one. It is a lack of mobility on your part to bring your shoulder over. It requires a more open position in tuck handstands. So do identify what are the factors giving cause to your dislike, and then maybe drilling down on these factors. Like if you can work on mobility, maybe you spend more time on the mobility instead of suffering through the tuck handstand drills. Make your life a bit easier in that sense. And then so that when you have a bit more open shoulders and you go to tuck handstands, okay, it is not so torturous. Or if it's none of the above, like it's not strength, it's not mobility, you just generally dislike, then maybe you have to ask yourself, is going through this suffering worth it? Yeah, like is handstand such an important aspect of your life that you have to go through this pain? So must push a lot more. So probably it sounds like a strength kind of issue where you just have to build the strength. So spend time developing the strength instead of just killing yourself over doing the drills. Cool. Thank you. That's from me.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
whatever
So
that with the added last point, this is why they hired me, right? I'm as naive as they are. You really need to understand your motivation behind doing this, which is why I try to ask, remember your purpose of coming to this class. Remember why you're doing this. If you're just doing this to get one screenshot, then maybe it might not hold you through the class at all. You need to know that what is the higher purpose behind doing this. And to me, I've said this in class, this is a crazy project that you can take off. It's super, super hard to do. It's something that requires 110% dedication. To me, now that I've embarked on this project, it does help me to figure life out. When things get a bit harder, I can transfer it into aspects beyond handstands. So I think when you have a very clear purpose behind that, you are more willing to suffer, in essence. And I will shut up.
okay, I think you may have just scared off half the people in the chat. I hear the word suffer come up a lot, but yeah, it's true. Handstand sucks. Don't learn handstands. Do something else. Okay, so next question we have is, do you guys find that your body becomes more and more imbalanced as you train handstands? I.e., one side stronger than the other because most normal people have a better side to prefer working on? So yeah, let me just talk about this a bit. The answer is yes. Like I personally feel that the more I practice my handstands, I come to realize that my right side is way stronger than left side. But I also come to realization that it is because I favor my right side and I haven't been loading my left side enough. So now we come into the handstand, which is a position that requires work from both sides, especially eventually when you go on to your other variants, like your one-arm handstands for some of the more advanced people here, that difference will become really, really evident. So to say that it is, I wouldn't say it's normal, but I would say that it's common. The difference is common means that it happens to a lot of people. Normal means that, not normal means that it shouldn't be happening. So if this describes you right now, you're doing your handstands and you start to realize, hey, one side just feels weaker, doesn't push as well, not getting any better. My opinion is that you should take steps to find out why that's happening and try your best to get that side stronger. Because if your goal is to work up that handstand skill level and get better at like your presses, your shifts or whatever stuff you have, if you don't address that issue now, eventually you will have to. It will come back to, you will find it again, and you will eventually will have to address it. Yeah. So that's my 2 cents.
If you always just straddle press into your handstand, then you will forever be even on both sides.
Or pike press or tuck press.
Yeah, like press or tuck press or slaughter press also can. Then you'll be even on both sides. So just like, don't ever start kicking up. Just go straight for press.
Okay, if you have no idea what it does, if you have no idea what Kaylin and Beverly just said, just know that they are showing off, and you just ignore that, okay?
It's absolute nonsense. Don't listen.
Okay. Any other coaches you want to add stuff? Or anyone else has questions, actually? Like, this is a very informal session. So if you want to interrupt us, just ask. And we are not here as experts. We are just merely sharing what we've known and our experiences with the subject matter and learning from other people as well.
I'll just chime in on that, mainly with 2 things in particular. One is specifically towards the practice itself, where you tend to have a favorite side that you do stuff with. So whether be it bailing out, cartwheeling out of handstands, or kicking up in a handstand, or if you do like puppy press or anything, like you have a favorite side basically. So having more time spent on that side definitely means that movement pattern on that side is more developed. The muscles along that side is more developed, but that is just out of your personal preference. And so does that lead to imbalance? Definitely yes, just because it's like more dominant, that type of movement is more dominant on one side. Yeah. And personally, that is why, from a general perspective of physical development, I personally will approach it in a way that I want to have you develop equally on both sides. Of course, this idea can be limited at some point in time. I do acknowledge that. If you start to explore things with more complexity, the time taken to achieve that symmetry can be quite a lot, you know. But as best as possible, to me, I'm trying to mitigate and minimize imbalances, which is why like I personally encourage kicking up with both sides, learning how to kick out with both sides, cartwheeling out on both sides. Number one is just to try to minimize imbalances, and number two is just having more options to work with. Having a favorite side means in your brain there's always that one preferred side to go with. But what if in actual scenarios, someone is beside me to my right when I'm in a handstand class, I can only cartwheel out from my right, otherwise I cannot do anything at all. And are you just going to be stuck with, I will just crash my face into the floor because that person to the right is still holding his handstand and doesn't want to come down? Like, you have the left side to go to. If you have practiced well enough, you have that option to work with. So yes, having more options to work with as well is what I'm trying to get at. And number two is what am I going to say? The practice itself and how it leads to other stuff. So handstands have certain muscle groups that you'll always be working and challenging on. It puts your muscles, certain joints at certain length if you're been practicing it for a certain period of time. And so comes this idea of like counter stretching, and like along with it, the idea that you use it or lose it. So if if you're only focusing on handstand practice, let's just talk about shoulder, for example. You are always putting, or for the most part, putting your shoulder in flexion. And so sometimes people tend to tell me or tell us that, I keep doing handstands, then after that I feel my shoulder very tight. Last time I can bind my hands behind, but now I cannot. Then now my next question to you is, when was the last time you tried to like interlace and bind your hand behind and try to stretch it that way? Like, if you have never done so, then of course you will get tight because of what I just said. Like, it's a use it or lose it kind of basis. So to me, counter stretching serves as a purpose of maintenance as well. Maintenance of range of motion, so that you maintain that range. It doesn't go away. At the same time, it provides some degree of relief over whatever you have done over your intense handstand sessions. So this is where we start tying in other classes where, you know, in Kin Stretch, they have this idea of like daily joint rotational work. It boils back down to maintenance of your joints range of motion. A lot of time, tightness doesn't stem from you doing certain things too much. It stems from that plus you specifically specializing on that, focusing on that only, and not doing other stuff. You get what I'm saying? So keeping in mind, again, use it or lose it. You are going to lose ranges of motion if you are solely going to zoom in and focus on one thing only. Yeah. So, yep, that's that. Anyone else wants to say anything?
I'm sorry, I'm going to add on also.
No, cannot. Kidding.
So basically, the joke already. So basically, precisely what Jason is saying, you lose it, use it or you lose it, right? If you are essentially thinking that, okay, every day I spend 1 hour on handstands and then I feel like, oh, my shoulders are getting tighter, I'm getting these issues with my wrist and everything. You do have to understand that, bluntly put, there are 24 hours in a day. You cannot blame your body's reaction of that 1 hour compared to the rest of your 23 hours. What are you doing in the rest of the 23 hours? There's probably going to have a bigger impact on your posture / mobility. Yeah. If you are constantly slouched over a desk, over a computer, you don't walk in a certain way, you spend less time in a squat, essentially you are going to lose certain range of motion that you do not have, or you do not work on. Yeah. So it is unfair to blame handstand or unfair to blame whatever you are focusing on if you do not actively spend time on maintaining whatever else you had previously. So that shoulder behind interlacing finger stuff, if you are forcing yourself 23 hours here, that is probably more critical than the handstand itself. Cheers.
Okay. Hey, so I think we've hit our magical 1 hour mark. So we're gonna close off the session today. If you have questions, message us, email us. We are always active on social media. If we will be, I mentioned at the start of the chat, we will have the recording up, so you can always refer back to hear what we say. Don't have to take notes. Okay? We have technology now to help us. I'm just going to close it off to have the last word because I can. Just that with all that talk about imbalances and different sides, know that it can be trained. Just because your favorite side doesn't mean your other side will be bad forever. It can be trained, like Rafael said, control and coordination. Things can change. We just have to practice more of it. Great. So I'm just going to type right now in the chat the 5 points that we said. If you're unsure about any of the points, feel free to reach out to the coaches individually or to us. We will get you sorted. And we also like to just introduce our new product, which is our online handstand training. We really need to find a better name for that, but for now it's online handstand training. The June registration is closed. If you missed that but you'd like to be notified when registration opens again, drop us an email. We will place you on the wait list, which will give you priority for the next round of registrations. Okay. If that's not for you, we also have live virtual classes, where you get to interact with all our lovely handstand coaches. And if the timings don't suit, we have the pre-recorded classes where you get to listen to our lovely coaches talk about handstands and guide you throughout that practice for 1 hour. Okay, so I'm going to end it now. So thank you for joining us. We will definitely have another chat. We're not sure when it is, but look out for, we will announce it when we do. Okay, so yeah, that's all. Thank you so much for joining today. I know 9 a.m. is pretty early. Okay, so thanks. Have a good Sunday, and we will see you when we see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
See
Bye.
ya. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You're welcome, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you in class in 20 minutes. Kin stretch. Sunday kin stretch with Alvin. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks,
Thank
Ian.
you.
Okay,
I'm
see you
very
all.
sure that's Jiasheng AFK. Very sure that's
Yeah.
Jiasheng AFK.
Okay. Hey, thanks for joining in the chat. Hope you have fun.
Yeah, you just
And if ever you want to join on future chats, like chime in, please always come. You're always welcome. Everyone's always welcome.
yay.
Okay, I'm gonna leave. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.